On today's episode, we have Magen Smith, self-storage CPA. I'm Jim Ross. He's Matt VanHorn. And this is 3 Mile Domination, where we talk about anything and everything regarding the world of self-storage. Hi everyone, this is Jim Ross from 3 Mile Domination Show. This is episode number 17. And this one we got another vendor spotlight. We got Magen Smith here. She's the self-storage CPA. How's it going, Magen?
Good, how are you?
Good. Thanks for taking the time to join me here and
Sure.
going in more. I saw you did a speech at the ISS show a little while ago and figured this would be some great topic to get you on and discuss.
Yes, absolutely. I love hearing you guys speak at Vegas as well.
Yeah, it's been, 4 or 5 years in a row, so it kind of blends together how long it's been, but it's one of those things you get nervous the first time doing the speeches and all that, but once you get the first one out of the way, it's like, okay.
It's fine, yeah.
It's kind of fun though, right?
Yeah, it was fun.
I thought you'd get in front of a big crowd like that, it might make you a little bit nervous, but it's like, no, once you start speaking, the first 30 seconds, I just let it roll, and it's good.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, those first 5 minutes are, and then after that,
That's good.
all good.
Now I do
It's
these
fun.
videos, well, who knows how many people are watching these, so we'll see. But anyway, I want to get into, again, we're the self-storage CPA. I know you do audits, and we also talked about you doing operational audits. I thought you'd kind of go into more detail on what you do and kind of why it's important, and what we can learn from and go from there.
All right, yeah, I do. So I don't do financial audits. I do self-storage audits. And the way that I do it, I break it up into 2 types of audits. So the first one is more of a smaller spot check audit where I do, make sure all your units are okay. Do your walkthrough, trace your money to the bank. That's kind of the mini quick version audit.
Mini
And then the
facility
other
audit.
a facility audit, yeah. Then the other one is an operational audit where I actually figure out what your policies and procedures are, and everybody's are a little bit different, and that's fine.
Sure.
And then test those procedures. So if changes of address should be in writing, we check to make sure that happened. If leases should be fully executed, test to make sure that happened. I actually did one in Los Angeles last week, and they had a management company that was running the business, and it was sort of a few layers of management. They had a owner company, and then a oversight company, and then a management company. So it was a couple of layers there. So we did it. I went out and did an audit for the week, and it was interesting to see the management company's ideal policies and procedures of what should be, which were very well thought out, and then what was actually happening at the facility. And being able to track that difference and tell the owner, okay, here's the gap, here's what you need to fill in, and then here's how to test to know if it happened. So I think all parties had a good experience with it.
That's great. So in doing that, you're actually like at the sites and just kind of going from point A to point Z and making sure everything's being done the way the corporate office, is hoping to have done.
Yeah, we start by, talking to the staff first and just kind of getting to know them, see how they do, what they do every day, what happens. And then you see how things are running. And then from there you go up and then interview the people who make the policies and the people who oversee. And then if it's being done properly or not.
Sure.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Again, it's twofold. I see some places where, the manager is the manager of that site. And you want them to take ownership of that site, and that's really that's their baby. You're kind of handing over the keys to $1 million business, and
right.
And you want to make sure things are being done properly. And really, it's no fault to the managers. I've seen some guys that are so gung ho and so this is my business, this is my site. They kind of go off on their own when it comes to the way they do certain things. That's not the way corporate is structured, the way it should be done correctly. I don't know if they do it on purpose, but it's just, I think kind of human nature, start kind of tweaking things and doing things your own way. And then before long, you start seeing, you're you're venturing off on what corporate is really, needing to have done. So I can definitely see why that's very important.
Right. Or sometimes corporate policies are good and work at one location, and then because of the demographics or the manager can pull it off or whatever, but then implementation somewhere else, it's not that it's a bad policy, it just doesn't fit with that location, that manager style, that demographic. So you always have to be aware of these overall policies and make sure that they're actually good, sound, can be followed through. And at this audit, the manager was great. He loved the facility, he loved the management company, he knew he'd have a future. It just, like one example was changes of address should be in writing. Well, the assistant thought he was going to save money by not printing the forms. He would just let the customer type in on the second monitor their new address, thinking that was fine. Well, he didn't realize, the reasoning behind the rule, and that it was law and it was a legal issue, and auctions couldn't be done if the address had changed and there was no paper trail. So it just was a communications gap. Very easy to fix. You just tell the guy, no, print them, and here's why. And then, in their internal audits, you check to make sure that was actually done properly.
Yep, and I've seen that. I've been guilty of that myself, actually, of having a policy in place, but really not doing the one extra step of explaining why that's in place, why that even exists. So,
Right.
And I've seen that change of address thing time and time again. I used to be one of my businesses was a self-storage auctioneer, and I used to do auctions for all over the valley here in Utah. I did some in Nevada and that, and it was amazing. We started doing some of the audits before doing the auction, and exactly that. You start looking at making sure the change of addresses and that, and
Right.
when the letter went out to a certified mail, that's a different address from what's on the contract, and no paper trail, so scrap it. And now you're wasting money, and you got to start all over again. And so, again, if it's this little tweak here and there, will save a lot of pain in the butt later on.
Because he wanted to save, what, half a cent not printing the paper?
Yeah, he was doing what he thought was best for the company.
He really did. He had no idea. They had a meeting on, expenses and reducing expenses and not printing as much and being paperless. And that's how he interpreted what he was hearing. So it just was a communications gap. And it was funny because this particular one, and I've seen this happen multiple times, where the facility needs some love, right? So they do the repairs and they get it looking nice, and then they keep the customers, get more customers, increase occupancy. So the revenue is going way up. Well, everybody's happy, right? Revenue went up. This is all we look at. We're making money. But nobody takes the time to look at the little details of making sure, because they're busy. The management company, it's a lot of work to turn a facility around. It takes a long time, and they haven't quite gotten to, well, we purchased this and all the leases are with the old company. Should we have a schedule for converting leases? Or, there's not actually wire tags on the units when we're cutting tenant locks off. We're just putting a company lock, and there's what's happening with these tags, or just different things like that. So I find people get a little bit distracted by the revenue and the occupancy and the exciting numbers, and sometimes don't think that there's a lot of little details that need to be followed through.
Yeah, when it's those little details that when they keep piling up and they add and start snowballing, they come back to bite you in the butt. So
yeah. Not that storage is overly complicated, but there are certain things you have to check at each facility.
Yeah, well, I've always said that. It's not rocket science. We rent air, but running the business and doing that properly and making sure everything is working in conjunction with each other and taking care of the small details. That can make or break a facility over the course of
That's
the years.
right. That's right. I like to say, if you met your facility in a bar, what would it be? Would it be a 6? Would it be an 8? Don't we want it to be a perfect 10, right? That's our goal. And I don't know that I've met any facilities that's a perfect 10 yet. Everybody has some space to improve. Not that many are a 2 either, but they all have some space to improve in some area, whether it's phone calls, whether it's auctions, whether it's past due.
I think my first facility was probably a -2. It was nasty. I remember going in and the office was leaking. Half the doors were prior break-ins that they never fixed. It was just, there was no procedures. Half the leases were missing. It took, it took a while to turn that place around.
those things take a while. I did an audit last year, just about a year ago, and I walked in and I printed the map. This place had one employee. The guy had bought the facility at an auction, actually. He had one employee who didn't know storage at all. I walked in, I printed the map and one other report, and the manager walked out. She quit.
She knew.
She knew.
Up. Yep.
She knew.
Yep.
She quit. So this poor guy had 0 employees. Me standing in the office going, what am I supposed to do now? And people walking in, like, wanting to make payments. It was...
That's nuts.
It was crazy.
How much that person was stealing.
Yeah. I don't even think I ever was able to do the audit because by then it became such a different engagement. Yeah. I ended up staying and helping him, and I actually worked there. I called another manager that I know to help me answer phones and take payments. And then we got an employee in, and I trained them and got them.
Yeah, I'll trade horror stories with you. I got a contract to do a consultation a few years back. Same thing. I met with the owner, prior, and he's like, "Oh, my employee, he's the best, but I just want you to come in and just kind of see how things are going. He fully admitted he's not very hands-on, but he trusts this manager with the world. First little red flag, And this manager's been there for 10 years at this point. I walked in, and of course I kind of get the little gruff back. I was like, what are you doing here? What's going on? Like, I'm just here to just check around a little bit. Same thing. I pulled a walkthrough report, pulled that up, and then I pulled a collection report and asked him when his last auction was. And he just turned white, just like that. So I go, okay, I knew something's up. And then I asked, well, could I see your receipts from your last auction? And I started getting and he pulls out this box, this ring box, just full of papers and receipts, and like, I think they're in here. I'm like, was your auction just like last week? It's like, so just totally a mess. Well, it took all of about 5 minutes to realize this guy pocketed about $3,000 from the auction prior to that. And he just immediately started giving me attitude. It was not my place, but I fired him. I had to just get out, just go. So I called the owner, like, yeah, we had a little hiccup. Like, what? It's like, yeah, your manager's gone. He just started kind of freaking out, like, just come down here, we'll explain. And literally within about 24 hours, we kind of pieced together how much this guy had been stealing, and then hired the new manager and got things turned around fairly quickly. But it just kind of shows you why just having that third party come in and start looking around it, you start seeing things that are very apparent that can be easily fixed, or just have more of a check and balance things in place. That, well, we're not saying that we're going to point fingers that everyone's embezzling, everyone's stealing, but policies and procedures and checks and balances are there for a purpose. They're there for the employee and they're for the manager company to everything to work together.
Right. And my favorite ones are the ones that the manager and if you can give me any tips on how I can do my job better, if you can help me improve, those are my favorite. And that's the ones that I really enjoy doing, where it's like, yeah, I can probably give you small little tips that I was able in Los Angeles to give this guy, just little things that would just make his life easier that nobody told him and he didn't know about, and just other ways that I've seen businesses work. I've been doing some audits for 5 years at the same place, and really? I know those managers are not stealing, and they enjoy when I come by because they get to show that everything's in order and their work's being done, and the owner feels comfortable. He's like, I sleep well at night knowing you're looking at it. Like, I don't have to spend all my time not knowing what report to pull and what to check, because I know you have it under control. And those are my favorites. And that's how I approach everything, really with the spirit of trying to help all parties, spending all their time on something that doesn't need to be done or doing it inefficiently. Yeah. So that's why I like doing audits.
Oh, yeah. And the more businesses that you're exposed to, I'm
Hmm.
sure you pick up on certain things like, oh, okay, and then the next site you're going to, you can apply what you had learned or what you've seen before that you hadn't been exposed to before, and implement
Right.
that, and it probably just snowballs on each other.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Exactly.
You know, again, like we talk about, it's storage is not rocket science, but again, you make these little tweaks, and it, the small things make a big difference. I always
I've
say
yet to
that.
see a
So
perfect 10.
that's we all strive to be.
That's right.
So what even got you involved in doing this?
In doing audits or
Yeah,
storage in general?
yeah, self storage in general.
So I worked in college, way back college.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for a guy, I just did data entry in college. And then he was going to build a storage facility. And he knew nothing, and his partners knew nothing, and nobody wanted to learn it. So he
Sure,
said, I went to school for accounting and marketing. So he said, you can run a business. And, fresh college grad, I
sure,
was the manager there, and they were supposed to build multiple businesses, and I was going to oversee all of them, but it never happened. They still only have the one.
sure.
So I worked there for a few years, and I really enjoyed it. I liked the industry. I liked the people. I liked the stories. But I was a college graduate with a degree in accounting and marketing, and I
Yeah.
wanted to use my accounting degree. So I got my CPA license. I worked at a few public firms. I did taxes, had children, realized I didn't like working 60 hours a week with young children at home.
Sure.
So I started my own firm, and I quit my job like a few weeks before my second daughter was supposed to be born, but she came early. So it actually was the day after I quit. So I quit and the next day had
Had the
her.
baby.
Well, yeah, the baby. So in the hospital, like as I'm being wheeled from the delivery room to the recovery room, I
Yeah.
see the guy who built the facility that I worked at
Hmm.
was in there too. He had just had his daughter, well, his wife did,
Oh
obviously.
wow.
So he was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Me, like in my hospital gown, looking, I'm sure, fabulous. He said, "Well, great. I need you to come do audits for me because I had done them at one of the CPA firms." I said, "Well, I'm gonna call you next week." He's like, "I mean, you just had a baby. Like, give it a little time."
Yeah, yeah.
So I would do audits for him, like with my children, because nobody was out there. It was an unmanned site. And then as soon as I got around to opening my bank account, my boss at the storage where I managed called me and said, "We hate our bookkeeper. Can you come do our accounting for us?" I said, "Sure." So it kind of just snowballed from there where,
Nice.
people refer me and people who work with me tell their friends who also own. Um, and writing articles and just kind of helping share information. It's just kind of snowballed from there.
That's
But I
great.
like the industry. It's family friendly, I find.
Hmm.
And I mean, I have kids. Most people have children. It's a warm industry. Everybody that I've ever met in Vegas or any of the trade shows, you guys have just been so welcoming and warm. People seem to share knowledge.
Good.
It's just a good industry. There's a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes that's bad because these people build them and trust their manager, like you said, and don't pay attention. And so there's a lot of risk. There's some oversight that's needed. Um, but it's a fun industry to be involved in, especially right now because it's
Booming. Yeah. It's a great thing.
it's like a new cycle. People are building again, people are moving, there's people are buying. Everything's coming back. So in a few
Yep.
years, you're going to have this fresh group of owners who saw opportunity and built and need some help
Yep.
because things are going to go wrong for some of them. That's just the nature of the beast. I've actually never met an owner who's never experienced any theft ever.
Yeah.
Every single owner I know had something
Some sort.
stolen,
Hmm.
even if it was small. Like one, I even did the accounting and I saw the rentable and unrentable units kept moving around. And then the total units dropped. And I'm like, something's
Hmm.
wrong. So I emailed the
Yeah.
owner. He said, just ask the manager. It was a new manager. I didn't trust her very much. I asked her and she gave me some excuse. So I told him, I said, I don't believe her. I can investigate further. He said, I don't care. It's one unit. I don't even care. I said, all
Wow.
right. It turns out she was taking it off the books and she was
Yep.
pocketing money, and it was like a parking spot unit.
Yep.
So every single one has experienced something. Some
Oh yeah. And there's it gets creative on how
thing.
people can hide money. So,
Hmm.
but again, being a CPA, you can easily recognize that, probably more so than most, and see where
Yeah.
the money's going.
Yeah.
So
The
how
one
long?
that the
Okay.
one that I did this time,
Yeah.
they had gas cards that they would give out as referrals, as
Really?
thank you. Well, So the managers would fill up half of the amount of the gas card in their car. So the card was still there, the serial number was still there.
Oh no.
But instead of it being a $25 card, it was like a $12 card,
That's terrible.
which is pretty crafty. It's
Yeah,
pretty
I haven't heard
crafty.
that one before.
Yep.
I'm sure the owners love to hear that.
Uh-huh.
Nah, I know this last one you did was like almost a week, 'cause sounds like it was a pretty big,
Yep.
intensive audit. How long are your average audits?
It depends. So this one was a week, and the reason I had it a week is because I was out in Los Angeles. So if I didn't finish, it's not like I could just, go back down. I'm in Louisiana, so I
Sure.
couldn't just pop back out there. Just a facility audit where you just check units and then the money trail. I mean, it depends on how deep they want me to go. If they want me to open every vacant unit and it's 1,000 unit facility,
That's a joy.
I mean, that can take an entire day,
Yeah. Yep.
If they want me to trace every single check instead of just daily deposits as a total, that can take a lot longer. I mean, I had some where I had to, just the way they deposited money, I had to trace every single check. It was 1,000 unit facility.
Wow.
So, I mean, it would take me, I don't know, 6 hours just to trace the money part,
Yeah.
just that, and then an entire day if they want me to open every single unit. So it kind of depends on how deep. I try to do different levels of like surface level, where we just take deposits as a day. That's a lower level that I can obviously do that a little bit faster. So it just kind of depends on how deep they want me to go. And then depending on the size of the facility determines how much I'll pull for testing, for leases and such.
Yeah.
A bigger facility, I might test a few more. If I immediately see problems on the first lease that I pull, I may do more or
It's
less
gonna be a long
depending.
day.
Like, and sometimes like this one, I pulled probably 20 leases. I saw the same problems. Like I knew pulling another 20 leases wouldn't tell me anything I didn't already know.
Yeah.
So at that point, I can kind of say, okay, I know how this policy is implemented. So it just kind of varies on how deep they want me to go, how much information, how many layers of management there were. Like this one, I had to interview the management company, the oversight company. There was multiple meetings with multiple people,
Sure.
plus the people who hired me. So it was a lot of conversations and communications. So it just sort of depends on what they want.
Yeah. Well, again, you offer that service, so they can go as service level or as deep as they need to go. So.
Exactly. And sometimes it does start surface level because the owner really feels like everything's fine and they just kind of want that comfort check.
Yep.
And then once I get in and I have to call and everything is not fine,
Thumbs
I am
up.
going to do you a disservice with this level. I'm going to have to go deeper.
Yep.
And of course they say, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Exactly.
So it just kind of depends.
Well, and again, it's one of those things where, even as I've been with a management company for lots of years, and I'm doing the audits myself. However, it's again, it's what you're kind of biased. You've kind of created those policies and those procedures, and as your manager, and you've known them for years, and you almost kind of have a filter. I hate to admit it, but you kind of do. So I can see it's a great benefit of having a third party, non-biased person coming in and just flat out telling it exactly how it is and what's going on and recommendations. So I think it's a great service you're providing.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoy it. And it's not judgmental of what they do or what they don't do. It's just defining the gap.
Nope.
In some gaps, some owners would say, I'm okay with that. I don't care about this issue at all. I think it's fine. And
so anyway, let's end this here. And as far as people listening to this, and if they're interested in getting more information, how do they reach out to you?
they can go to my website at selfstorageCPA.com. You can also just Google Magen Smith. It's Magen CPA and find me. Website's the best way, and I have our contact form on there. Or you can just send me an email.
Great.
If you call me, it'll go to voicemail. You can leave me a message if you want to.
That works. And your website, by the way, is fantastic. Yeah,
Thank you.
Great information on there. So I'd highly recommend.
Yeah, I have a lot of blogs on audits and why you should do them and the risks and a lot of information on audits on my website.
Yep, perfect. No, that's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the
All right.
time. All right.
No problem. Thank
Take
you.
care. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
See ya. Go to 3miledomination.com/call. Schedule your free 30-minute marketing tune-up call. I'll give you solid advice you can easily implement with or without us. Until next time.